Hello everybody, I'm Rowan6 with Rowan6 Entertainment, and welcome to a new series, a audiobook series of my fanfiction, The Dragon Hero Dovahkiin. The background art for this fanfiction is created by me. If you're interested in me doing art commissions for you, the link to my business Discord is down below. There's also a link to my community Discord, as well as the fanfiction link. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Chapter 11. It's been close to a month since Izuku's last meeting with Nezu. Izuku knew that the rat was starting to pull strings behind the scenes due to the frequent meetings with his staff and Aizawa's increased intake of coffee. But that didn't matter much to him after all, he did drop a pretty big bomb on him. But seeing Nemuri worried about her friend having a heart attack due to all the caffeine in his bloodstream made him worry. It got to the point that Nemuri asked if Izuku could make a potion that could replace his coffee habit. Unfortunately, he had to tell her such potions were equally unhealthy as his coffee addiction. When she heard that, she was quite upset, and seeing it made his heart ache, so much in fact it made him go down a line of research that he never thought he would have to. It took him an entire month of research to develop an enchanted ring that would reduce somebody's need for sleep without any side effects. This allowed Aizawa the capability to sleep for only 2 hours a day instead of the requirement of 8. Which Nemuri made him promise to reduce his coffee intake to 1 cup per day in exchange for the ring, which he gladly accepted. Nemuri was extremely grateful, so much in fact that she took him out to dinner at a fancy restaurant. He was worried about the price, but she insisted and said that this was one of her favorite places and she had gotten a good deal and discount on the place thanks to her saving the owner's life. So he really did not think about it much. But when he saw Nemuri in an extremely nice black dress that hugged her figure quite nicely made Izuku's heart skip a beat at the sight. Izuku honestly did not expect her to dress like that. Shaking his head, he reminded himself that he was dealing with the pro hero Midnight, and of course, she would dress like that, and it was most likely an attempt just to tease him. He had to remind himself multiple times that this wasn't a date, just an outing between friends. But God, did it not make him wish that it was? Nemuri picked up on this quite easily and could tell that Izuku was clearly under the impression that this wasn't a date but simply an outing between friends. In an extremely nice restaurant in a romantic setting, while she wore a sexy black dress, and all the while she subtly flirts with him and teases him. God, this is going to be harder than they thought. But she knew that Izuku was 100% worth pursuing, and even though he clearly thought this was an outing between friends, it did not mean that she could not pretend this was a date. But she made sure not to overdo it like the other girls and herself had planned. But Nemuri made sure that Izuku enjoyed the time that they had together. After that nice dinner on the very next day, Nezu called him into his office to discuss something he didn't expect was coming. "You want to run that by me again?" Izuku said, annoyed. He could not have heard him right. If he did, life just got a little harder. All Might will be a teacher here this semester. I am sorry I made this arrangement before I knew the circumstances between you two. I attempted to reverse it multiple times, but the UA school board kept overruling me. But rest assured, I am making steps so you have very little interaction with him, as well as making it very clear to him not to bother you. I can understand if you wish to attend another school due to his presence, but I would like to see if we can come to a compromise before you take such an action. Nezu said with a sigh. No, there is no need for me to look for another school. I have nothing against All Might, as long as he remains professional and leaves me and my students alone. I honestly don't care if he teaches here. My only concern is security. Izuku says, shaking his head. This caused Nezu to raise a non-existent eyebrow in confusion. Then why won't you heal him if you have nothing against him? And what do you mean by security? Nezu said, confused. Let's start with your second question first. As you know, All Might's agency, Might Tower, has an equal amount of security to UA, maybe even greater. But All Might's agency has been attacked and breached over 252 times this year alone, and all in an attempt to get to All Might. I simply do not think it's a good idea to put such a target on this school. Izuku said, frowning. Izuku knew quite well the dangers of having a high-profile target like All Might at an institute of learning. He lived it after all. Once he took up the position of headmaster of the College of Winterhold, there was nothing but constant attacks from dragons, mad cultists, vampires, and everything in between. If it wasn't for his innovative security system and custom wards, the school would have been leveled by now. Even though the place was locked up tighter than a Dwemer lockbox and Uric security for the Elder Scrolls combined, he still had problems with security. The old adage, if there was a will, there was a way, couldn't have rang truer than ever, every time security was breached in the College of Winterhold. Shaking his head, Izuku continued to the next question. As for the other question, well, that's quite simple. I have nothing against All Might, just the man behind the hero. The man behind the hero is a crippled, weak, old man, that is under the impression that a hero needs a quirk to be one. The man is so jaded from the world because of his injuries that he forgets what truly makes a hero, Izuku says. And what's that? Nezu asks curiously as he sips his tea. A hero doesn't need power, just guts, determination, and heart, and they don't even need the title to be one. Heroes are born every day and come in many forms, from doctors to firefighters, to police officers, to people just giving a helping hand to anyone in need. The human race had these heroes way before the title even existed, so tell me why a quirk is now required to be one? Why does a quirk even matter what place you have in society? Nezu did not know what to say to that, which resulted in him remaining silent. Izuku then took that opportunity to continue. The answer to those questions is that it doesn't and it shouldn't. All Might had forgotten all these things, and until he remembers that, it's better if he fades away slowly to make place for the next symbol to rise to move society along. Izuku said with passion that surprised Nezu. I see, Nezu said, as he hummed in agreement as he sipped his tea before continuing. I can understand your concern about security, and I will upgrade it. Do you have any suggestions? Nezu said. Yes, allow me, Serena, and Lydia to act on school property against any villains or security breaches and with any force that we deem necessary, including lethal. I'll even set up enchantments on all the entry points that can determine if anyone who enters has ill intent against the school or its students. The enchantments will notify me immediately if something like that occurs. Izuku said seriously. Nezu starts to think over his request. On one hand, the boy and his friends will give him way more security than he could ever dream of. On the other hand, he might have some dead villains that he will have to clean up. Then again, it was not the first time that he had to clean up after somebody, and it's definitely not going to be the last. Very well, I will give you full permission on that, and I'll even sign the proper paperwork in advance. But there's something else that we need to talk about before I let you go. Nezu said after he took a long sip of his tea. Oh, "And what's that?" Izuku asked as he quirked an eyebrow. "Katsuki Bakugo and your previous school Aldera," Nezu said calmly and with a neutral tone. Izuku just pinched his eyebrow in a mixture of frustration and annoyance at the mention of his childhood tormentor and that hell they call a school. "What about them?" Izuku asked, visibly annoyed. "First, I plan on completely destroying Aldera as an apology and as an olive branch of peace. Second, Katsuki Bakugo seems to have a big backing behind him since 2 UA board members have him as a backer. Even though neither of them has any connections to him or his school, they are backing him for some reason, and because of those backers on the board, I cannot prevent his enrollment. Knowing his quirk and his test scores, he will most likely get into UA. Due to his volatile nature and his quirk, I'll have no choice but to put him in Aizawa's class. I know we already discussed what class you and your group wanted to be in and we decided on Aizawa's. But I'm completely willing to swap you into class 1B instead," Nezu said calmly and with a neutral tone. "I had a feeling this would happen, but I do not wish to swap classes. If I do, I wouldn't be able to be comfortable if I couldn't keep an eye on him. And if I'm in another class, I know he would just find another person to abuse or belittle. And I will not have any of that," Izuku said with the level of finality that made it very clear that it wasn't up for debate. "Very well, I'll make sure to keep an eye on him and make sure Aizawa does the same," Nezu said with a nod of his head. After that, Izuku simply left his office. 3 months later, 1 month before the entrance exam. All Might was having a rough 5 months. First, he couldn't find a successor on his terms and was forced to turn to Night Eye and use his protege. He did not want to use his protege in the first place due to the boy's complete loyalty to his former sidekick. He wanted a protege that he could mold to his ideals and into his own image. But now, even that candidate whom he was forced to consider was not even possible. Which brings him to the second reason why these 5 months were really hard on him. When he attempted to give young Mirio one for all, the vestige of Nana and one other showed up with nothing but a look of disappointment on their faces. And if that wasn't bad enough, they decided to dump a fuck ton of information into his brain that gave him the worst migraine that he ever had in his whole life. When the migraine finally passed and he processed all the information that was dumped into his brain, he was quite upset. Apparently, if he gave young Mirio his quirk, he would die within the week from rapid aging. What made it now worse, he had to find somebody who was quirkless to be his successor. Even though he knew what it meant to be quirkless, he hated the fact that he had to give it up to another quirkless. Because he knew deep down that he hated that weak and useless side of him. But perhaps this could be a good thing. He remembered how desperate he was for a quirk and to be accepted by society. He could find somebody that he could perfectly mold into his image with a lot more ease than somebody who had a quirk. This leads to his final and third reason why his 5 months were killing him slowly. Apparently, after calling his dear friend David Shield to see if his daughter would be interested, he was then informed that she was at UA and doing a prep course for the hero course that Nezu designed for people with weak quirks or no quirks at all. So his being surprised was quite an understatement. How could the most intelligent being on the planet create a course for people like that? There is a reason why hero society is meant for the strong and not the weak. Especially since this is going to make it extremely hard for him to turn her away from this path and make her his successor. But he knew, even despite the extreme difficulty, he really did not have a choice. There was only one other quirkless person that he knew of, and he half expected that the boy had jumped off that very building that he had left him on. the boy simply reminded too much of the old him. It was one of the reasons why he brutally destroyed his dreams and left him there on that rooftop, hoping that he would either jump or give up. Even if he didn't, there was no way in hell the boy would be his successor now, not after what he did. Only if he knew about One for All needing a quirkless person to use it, he would have been perfect. This gave him no choice but to go to UA and talk to Nezu to see if he could help convince Melissa to be his successor. So here he is sitting in front of Nezu, sipping tea and listening to him completely denying his request. Telling him to leave her and a boy called Izuku Midoriya alone and not to bother them at all. He even made sure to make it very clear that even the other students of the prep course are to be left alone as well, especially since 2 of the others are quirkless. This made it even worse since it was now obvious to him that Nezu picked all the viable quirkless people in Japan to be in this prep course, leaving none of them for him and his uses. Yep, worst, 5 months ever. He needed to find a way to get one of them, preferably Melissa, under his thumb to use as his successor for One for All, and he needed to do it before Nezu even realized he had done it. So he simply agreed to everything that Nezu said, and walked out of the office, plotting how to get Melissa under his thumb, and he could only do that once the new school year started. As All Might left Nezu's office, Nezu sat there with a troubled expression. He could see that All Might was plotting something. If his guess was right, it had to do with Melissa and Izuku, since apparently now One for All needed a quirkless successor. This wasn't good, not one bit. Nezu knew this was going to cause problems. He honestly didn't care if All Might never found a successor, since very soon magic is probably going to be a new facet of the hero society in a couple of years. He knows that One for All is a very powerful quirk, but if what All Might told him was true, the quirk could only be transferred one more time before it became too dangerous to be transferred again. Not to mention, if he's right, the person that the quirk was transferred to would not be able to even use it properly due to it now being unstable. So, in short words, the potential of magic and what it could bring to hero society was way more important than One for All in his mind. It's a good thing that he planned for a possible outcome like this. Picking up his phone, he started dialing the cell phone number that belonged to Izuku Midoriya. Serena made it very clear in their last meeting that he needed to be completely transparent with the man if he wanted this relationship to continue. But unfortunately, he could not reveal the secret of One for All, but he could definitely give the boy a heads up. The phone call only lasted 5 minutes, but it was enough time for Nezu to explain the situation to him. He made sure that the man knew that he needed to keep certain secrets from him because he gave All Might his word to keep certain secrets confidential. Which the man surprisingly was quite understanding about it. The man knew that he was an animal of his word and was quite glad that he didn't break his word even for himself, especially since this meant that he wouldn't break his word with him in the future. After Izuku said his piece, he promptly thanked him before hanging up and ending the call. After the call with Izuku and Nezu immediately notified the rest of the staff and started to make preparations just in case this goes downhill, while Izuku makes his own plans. He has a feeling that one day he will end up fighting All Might, and he wants to make sure he comes out the winner. Pulling various notebooks off his shelf, he opens it to his most updated page on All Might and starts making plans to defeat another great foe.
Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!